Hello again. This is Joe Rankin from Bettendorf High School with the, at least in my head anyway, last middle school debate training session where I will go over the negative strategies for both Lincoln-Douglas debate and public forum debate. As I've previously stated, I'm putting those together in my mind because in my context for middle school, I am instructing or teaching or coaching debate as a whole, both Lincoln-Douglas and public forum debate, at least up to this stage. And just going to go over both for LD and PF together, just so you can see how that strategy goes. If these are topics that you are going to be implementing for, hey, coming to the middle school Bettendorf tournament, that's great. These will be directly applicable going through things. And if that's not the context that you're using, at least this might be a way to approach a topic and to present it to students in a particular way that makes sense to you. Hopefully it helps. Here goes. All right, first again, I always go over the tentative schedule for the purposes of this video. The focus here is on week 2. This would be the second practice in my schedule. I do practice with the middle schoolers 2 times a week for an hour and a half each. And this would be the week 2 second session because on the first session we went over the affirmative strategies and now we're going to go over the negative strategies. And then really week 3 into 4 will be the cases that they're hopefully developing, starting their blocks, those kind of things. We know how that goes with students, especially brand new students doing this for the first time. That mileage will vary, but the hope is that we're going to get that cases for the affirmative and the negative, both sides for LD and PF done in week 3 and 4. And then we're going to have these blocks kind of finalized in week 5, and then we're going to start practice debates week 6 and 7 into the actual tournaments themselves in the Saturday, May 9th and Saturday, May 16th. That's the goal. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, we just finished week 2 in the actual implementation of this plan, and so far it's going pretty well, and we're going to, hopefully it continues. In terms of the topic, I always put that back up there just to make sure, again, with this being a brand new activity for a whole lot of students, I don't know if they're going to be brand new coming into the room. I've had a couple of who said, hey, I couldn't make it to the first week. Can I jump in week 2? Of course you can. You can jump in week 3, week 4 even. It wouldn't be recommended, but of course we'll take them on because we want them to get involved as much as we possibly can. So I do try to make sure that this stuff is reviewed each time. Then again, I just reviewed the week 1 background articles just to point out that they were supposed to be cutting cards, and the document is right there to help them make a claim, a warrant, and an impact. And we should have been reviewing them at that point. At least in the previous affirmative day, we had about half an hour or so to review things, and we did for the negative day as well. So the intent here is just to make sure that we're always pushing forward, but making sure that they're engaging as well. Then I went through the exact same value discussion items that I did from the affirmative, this time making sure to focus on the negative. And so you don't have to go through this word for word again. You can choose to go through just a review. As I said, sometimes the kids aren't there every single week or every single practice, so you have to make sure you go through this. But either way, it's never going to be a bad thing to go through what utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics, and so on are, because these are concepts that they probably are not being exposed to in most walks of life. And so to make sure they understand what they mean and what approach would work best for their particular topic is always going to be okay in my mind. And so I'm not going to spend any time here going through this, but just know that they're all focused right there. They're on the screen. The students get exposed to them one more time. And hopefully you're starting to get an idea of how their approach works. Or hopefully at this point they're even asking you questions and going like, hey, I think this will work for me. What do you think? Now you can put that aside for the work time or just address it as a whole group if you think that kind of would be helpful for everyone. But either way, you have that approach, your option. Same for the criterion. I already went through this, so I'm not going to talk about it now. So the first thing I will go through here is for the negative. And again, I'd like to have that topic right there at the top every single time. The United States military ought to abide by the principle of non-intervention, but this time focusing on negative arguments. And so in this case, I would be telling students, here is one type of argument you could be making, and that is that deterrence and global stability. We need to intervene, otherwise the world will not be as stable. Deterrence works. And then I have some different articles here in terms of things like American Military Intervention, a user's guide. There's the direct link. You can click on it from the link in the description. You're going to have an access to this PowerPoint directly. But if you don't want to do that, you can just copy and paste or type it into your own Google and it'll pop right up because that's the actual title of the article and the source it is from. And that is all about deterrence and global stability, about how the military has actually helped the global stability in some way, shape, or form and deterred things from happening. The second argument on here is humanitarian responsibility. And that one just goes through and says we have to intervene when humanitarian needs say we have to. There is some global responsibility we have if something bad is happening in a particular part of the world. We have the obligation for moral reasons, perhaps, for global stability reasons, perhaps, but we have the obligation to go forth and do something about it. And that's what this is talking about here. And they have a number of articles. I think I always did about 5 for each particular issue that I was presenting to students. So that way they could have some variety of their argumentation. And it really just depends how many students you have. Right now, I'm working with, I think, about 8 to 10 LDers, and we're going to see what they can do. But I try to make sure they have a variety of arguments. And my goal, at least in the process of cutting cards and everything, is if they all cut 2, 3, 4 cards each, and if we put them all together, that'll be quite a bit of resources we have to make an affirmative and a negative case and all of those things. But either way, I'm trying to give them some good starting points here. The third argument that I gave them was alliances and national security, about how we have certain obligations based on our alliances because we've signed treaties, we've signed, kind of contracts, kind of things with different people. And in order to make sure that we meet those obligations, we are going to have to do certain things, which could include intervening in other countries. And so these articles give some proof to that, or at least some weight to those kind of arguments. And so as we're discussing and talking through these concepts, I'm trying to make sure that they can see the real world implications and decide which ones work best for them. But ultimately, still, I'm making sure that they're the one picking the argument that they're making, that they can justify what it means in round, that they can tell me how it improves utilitarianism or deontology or whatever value criterion kind of level stuff that they're arguing. But they have the option to go through all of these different paths on their own, because I'm just kind of giving them a whole bunch of food on the buffet. They get to decide what they pick up and put on their plate. And again, I just tell them the same thing that I did in the affirmative. I said, hey, it's Voltron assemble time. You need to go through the case structure, which is in part 1 or on our team canvas page. You should look at definitions, which was from the part 2, the topic overview. You look at the value criterion, which are located right in this PowerPoint itself, or from the previous affirmative strategies, but you pick the value, you pick the criterion, make sure they match and go together, and then find the contentions that work best for you. In the end, you're trying to make a 3 to 4 minute negative case. That's the goal, and you're going to submit it for review. The high school Lincoln Douglas debaters, the assistant coach, or myself will be going through them and talking with them more directly, and we'll build upon that and have them move forward. And then we'll start rebuttal prep, which will be the what if. And I think on here, the last time I said week 5, and here I said week 3. So you know how that goes in terms of things. But either way, it's going to be after we write the cases, and that's the important bit, that they have to get the cases done first. It's most likely that we're going to be getting the rebuttal prep worked on during week 4 and week 5, and probably revise it moving forward from there, because we're going to have actual practice rounds, and they'll figure out exactly how that all functions. But either way, this is how I would be instructing students on getting to the point where they're making their cases and organizing their thoughts. And then we went over PF. And again, this is from the week 2 background information file, where I originally asked them to cut some cards from these articles, and we would have reviewed them during week 3. And then here's the structure again, which is available in the description for the previous video from week 2. And then we get over into the argumentation here. So on the negative side, this is, again, the topics right at the top. I always like to have that right in front of them to make sure that they are focused on how it's different. So the United States federal government should ban corporate acquisition of single-family residencies. Now we're on the negative side. And so we're going to be saying government control is bad, like government overreach. Government shouldn't come in and tell us what to do kind of argumentation. And so there are some articles that are focused on this front in terms of how the government is maybe stepping over their bounds. So combat government overreach is the theme there. And they've got some articles to check out and go through. And the one thing I do like to tell them as we're going through articles of this nature is articles are sometimes both, right? They're going to be both affirmative and negative, because that's, kind of good journalism, that they're trying to get both sides of the story. And so sometimes finding evidence in some of these articles will sound like it's affirmative because, well, it is. And sometimes it sounds negative because, well, it is. And that's okay that they find an article that has both, but we have to look at, how it functions and how it works. And so making sure we're putting the pieces together properly is an important part of debate. But government control being bad. Very simple idea. The federal government has certain limitations, and they shouldn't be using this particular thing to ban corporations. They don't have that power. That's kind of the argument here. The second one is it will increase discrimination if we allow this ban to occur. And there is some interesting arguments on this particular front. They probably take quite a bit more of like talking to students, especially in this age group, about, because it's one of those things like if I go and buy a home, the person who is selling the home sees me directly. They can tell that I'm, this age or, this skin tone, this gender, those kind of things. Whereas if you allow corporation acquisition, sometimes that those things are not even seen, because a corporation could be buying the home and you never meet the corporation itself. You're meeting a representative of the corporation, and it's not for that person, it's for something else. So it's kind of a different kind of take of things. But either way, there's a lot of different nuances to that argument that you can explore if you really wanted to. But one thing that you could argue is that banning this corporate acquisition is actually going to increase discrimination, because we don't have that filtering system, to make one more barrier for people to like understand who and is buying the home and such. But there's a lot of different things to this argument. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if I love the argument, but when you're talking about how the real world works, it probably is something that you should at least prepare students to understand. And then we have this slowdown, disaster relief, recovery thing, just this idea that, corporations have more money than people and they can make things bigger, better, faster, stronger because they have more access to fluid capital that they can just spend. When something bad happens, I could pay for it myself, but I usually don't have the money just laying around to do so. A corporation has more funds generally than a single person, so they can do things faster, is the general argument. And there are some articles there that kind of help out to back that up a little bit more. But that's the general gist of that argument. And then I just tell them the same thing. Voltron assemble. It's time to go take forth, go find some things, 4-minute negative case, rebuttal prep, etc. And this time I do say week 3, even though, like I said before, I accidentally said week 5. But either way, they know in my head at the end of this what we're trying to do. We have to cut cards, and we have to check those cards with the students. That way we make sure that they're following the process. I know there's a lot of different ways to do the same kind of activity kind of thing. Different coaches like different styles, so feel free to adapt that as you will. But my biggest thing is always trying to get consistent evidence that we can share and we can all put in a shared location. And if we all follow the same formatting guidelines and we all set things up the same way, it will make it more easy to interchange those cards from student A to student B to student C, from coach A, from high school student helping out, those kind of deals. And so I'm just trying to get a consistent organizational pattern so that way we can focus on that. And then I'd put them in a shared directory and really get to town on how these cases are going to be shaping and being put together. And so in terms of things, that covers the negative strategies. So this will give you some topic-specific knowledge in terms of the March-April LD topic, if that is something that you desire and want to focus on. It will also give you some ideas for this PF March topic, which I know it's already April, so no one is really using it anymore. This is more of just a exercise for me for the middle school tournament that I'm using that topic still at, but also hopefully just a way that you can break down the topic and focus any topic, really, how to break it down and to present to students and hopefully get them to engage and understand what they're talking about. I think that's always our goal here, and trying to get that education front down. And so hopefully this was of use to you, and if you have any questions or concerns, you can leave a comment below. But otherwise, I hope that this serves your needs, and good luck.